Up they go again, hey? Another interest rate rise today. It's like the Reserve Bank has deliberately stuck its finger in the face of the government because it's been trying to blame the RBA for all of its economic ills. The latest hike will only increase the pressure on homeowners, and of course, this will even see more pain passed on to renters. Those feeling financial pain now will feel even more pain. And that's the way this works. The intention is to stop people spending. And it's those who have least to spend who have to wind back. People with plenty of money can keep spending freely, of course. This is a terrible caper of monetary policy, really. When the economy runs hot, it's the top end of town that tends to benefit. But to slow the economy down, the burden falls onto working families. And all this gives rise to some amazing hypocrisy from our politicians, which I'll detail in just a moment. Now, this rate rise comes a week out from the federal budget, and it highlights how on the economy, Labor is in all manner of strife.
This is a really difficult decision for a lot of Australians who are already under the pump.
Yeah, Jim Chalmers frames this like it's all happening to Labor, like the government has no role. But the Treasurer has to come to grips with the fact that Labor has taken the economy in precisely the opposite direction to what it promised. Labor promised to tackle the cost of living, and it's risen off the charts. Labor promised to control inflation. They did nothing of the kind, and the Reserve Bank is still trying to rein it in. Labor promised to cut electricity bills by $275 a year, and they've gone up by 3 times that amount. And Labor promised interest rates and mortgages would be easier under Labor, and we've seen 11 rate rises. So this budget, the first proper budget for Labor, will provide all sorts of economic and political tests.
Our job is to provide responsible cost of living relief, to do what we can without adding substantially to this inflation challenge that we have in our economy.
Well, your job is actually to commit to your promises, to deliver on your promises, and to manage the economy well. And the signs are already bad. It looks like Labor will allow politics to trump economics in next week's budget. It'll increase tax on cigarettes, always an easy hit, but this will tend to hurt people on low incomes because simply they tend to be the smokers. Labor will also end the low and middle income tax rebate, which means up to $1,500 more tax each year for 10 million taxpayers. And with all that bad news, you can expect Labor to throw money around for its preferred political targets. A footy stadium to try and lock in Tasmanian support. A boost to the dole for some. It'll boost the tax and spend churn in this country by handing out more money to families to try and make up for the money that's gone south thanks to power prices and interest rates, inflation, and those tax changes. And it might do something on rents and housing too, with measures that cost the budget, when its own unprecedented boost to immigration levels will do most to make that problem even worse. What's really needed for housing is cutting taxes and streamlining regulation and planning controls to boost investment in housing. But many on the left, politicians that Labor relies upon, are pushing a solution likely to make it all worse. They want to get rid of tax concessions. In other words, they want to get rid of incentives to invest in housing.
Right now, Labor is giving billions in handouts to investors and landlords through negative gearing and capital gains tax handouts. This is driving up prices and rents and locking young people out. Labor's biggest budget expenditure on housing is for tax breaks for wealthy property investors.
Yeah, it's an oldie but a goodie for the left, isn't it? Get rid of negative gearing. Teals like David Pocock have said they're on board too for some negative gearing changes as they focus on the housing crisis too.
Rents are pretty ridiculous. You know, somewhere like here in Canberra, you've got frontline workers, people working at Canberra Hospital, living in caravan parks because they can't afford anywhere to rent. And you look at the most recent rental affordability reports, there's almost no properties across the country for people on job seeker or youth allowance.
Jeepers, mate, join the dots. You know, we get the picture. The rental crisis is all about those nasty housing investors and the generous tax breaks that look after them. Right, sure. And a lack of housing thanks to government inaction. Well, according to the Register of Interests, Pocock owns a house he lives in. He just offloaded another property in Queensland. He has a place in Western Australia on long-term loan to a friend, apparently, and he's got an investment property too. Quite a portfolio, hey? But Pocock, of course, is no orphan. As the Sydney Morning Herald reported today, 7 of the Greens' 15 federal politicians own a total of 14 investment properties. Yep, 7 Greens with a total of 14 investment properties. The Greens' Treasury spokesman, Tasmanian Nick McKinn, owns 4 properties, as does the New South Wales Green Marine Faruqi. 4 properties each for that pair. Queensland Green Elizabeth Watson-Brown owns 3 properties all up. And the spouse of New South Wales Green Senator David Shoebridge owns 3 investment properties. So there you go. The Greens, it turns out, do know the value of a buck. They do know a bit about budgets. Well, family budgets at least. And they're pushing changes to tax concessions that it seems they are already taking advantage of, and which will never be taken away from them because any changes to negative gearing will never be retrospective. So there you go. Hypocrisy from the left. What a surprise.